Exogenic processes are interconnected with the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere, and includes the processes of weathering, erosion, transportation, and deposition.
On-site breakdown of rock and its eventual transformation into sediment. Full breakdown of a rock into unconnected grains or chunks without changes in its composition. Several ways. A rock formed underground experiences high confining pressure. When this rock is brought to the surface by a cliff, the high pressure is released due to the removal of overburden. As a result, natural cracks or joints are formed and it breaks the rock into rectangular blocks or irregular chunks or onion-like sheets. Intrusive rocks such as granite usually split into onion-like sheets parallel to the surface in a process called exfoliation. Or high altitude. Water inside the fractures of rocks experiences regular freezing and thawing. When it freezes, it causes the joints to expand and grow, causing pieces of rocks to detach. This process is called frost wedging. Expand when plants growing on its surface pry it open in a process called root wedging. In coastal areas, salt solutions from groundwater or from sea spray can accumulate in the pore spaces and fractures of the rocks. When salt crystallizes, it pushes apart the surrounding grains and weakens the rock, causing it to disintegrate when exposed to wind or rain. This process is called salt weathering. It occurs when there are chemical changes in at least some of the composition of the rock. Expansion occurs when a rock is exposed to high temperatures such as forest fire. Its outer layer expands due to baking. When it cools, the outer layer contracts, causing the surface to break off into sheets. Happens in certain minerals which are dissolved in water. Halite dissolves rapidly in pure water, while calcite dissolves rapidly in acidic water like rainwater. Limestone, which is composed of calcite, is weathered through this process and develops caves through time. It occurs when water reacts with minerals and breaks them down. The process occurs faster in slightly acidic water. The common rock-forming minerals like amphibole, pyroxene, and feldspar all react with water and form various types of clay minerals. Or the reaction of oxygen with minerals in the rock form oxides. Oxidation of iron-bearing minerals like biotite and pyrite produce iron oxide and iron hydroxide. First, when water is absorbed into the crystal structure of the mineral, causing it to expand. Certain types of clay expand through this process. Chemical weathering also occur in the roots of plants. Fungi and lichens secrete organic acids that dissolve minerals, and the nutrients are taken in by these organisms. There are also certain bacteria that consume certain minerals.
Separation and removal of weathered and unweathered rock and soil from its substrate due to gravity or transporting agents like wind, ice, or water. Sediment are moved along from source to where they are deposited.
And commonly occurs in flat, bare area or dry, sandy, and greasy soils.
Permanent body of ice, which consists largely of recrystallized snow and shows evidence of movement due to gravity.
Common erosion agent. Sediments move along in four ways. There are traction, saltation, suspension, and solution. Saltation, suspension, and solution.
Mass movement is the downslope movement of rock, soil, ice due to gravity. The difference in elevation between two plates creates slopes. Gravity pulls materials at higher elevation to lower elevation.
Slope stability, the balance between the downslope force caused by the gravity and the resistance force due to friction.
Weathering. Intact rock is held together by chemical bonds within minerals, by mineral cement, and by interlocking of grains, while fragmented rock is held on friction between fracture planes or by weak electrical charges between grains.
The freefall movement, bouncing and rolling of materials on a slope.
Forward rotation of the slope or a rock mass, rotation axis is usually at the base of moving mass below its center of gravity.
The downslope movement of coherent materials along a well-defined structure of rupture called sliding surface. Slide could form planar or curved sliding surface.
Lateral extension of fracture of coherent mass due to the plastic flow of its underlying material. This could occur as lead layers liquefy during earthquake.
The materials are saturated and move downslope as a viscous fluid.
Several types of movement could occur, usually labeled as complex.
Deposition is the process in which sediments settle out of the transporting medium. When glacier melts, the rocks are deposited on the ground. The layer formed when the materials are laid down is called bed. It varies in thickness depending on the volume of the sediment. The distribution of grain size in the layer is called sorting. If the beds consist only of one to two similar grain size, it has a good sorting. And if the grain size consists of mixture, is the poor sorting. 11 sedimentary environment, which is the glacial environment. It is referred to the areas where glaciers and ice sheets are found, such as in high altitude mountains and in polar regions. And the mountain stream environment, turbulent stream can carry large sediments to boulders and pebbles during the flood forming. Mountain front environment. When a stream enters the flat area of mountain, it loses energy and decreases the velocity. The result of land part called alluvial fan, which primarily compared of sand to boulder-sized sediments. Desert environment. When carrier sand and silt materials will sorted sand produce sand dunes, while the accumulation of salts from
Fluvial environment. In flat areas, rivers are slow-moving and commonly carry an assortment of pebbles, sand, and silt and mud. The coarser sediments tumble along the riverbed while the finer ones move along in suspension. Mud is deposited on the floodplain after flood events. Pebbles and sands are deposited on the inner bend of a meander. Beds of sand and pebble form lenses alternating with silt and mud layers. Environment. When a river enters the sea, it empties its load in a delta which extends to the shallow coastal area. The upper part of the delta consists of mostly coarse sand and gravel. The middle portion contains fine silt and sand, and the basal portion is mostly silt and clay. Mud is also found in the swamp. Environment. Tidal currents transport sand along the coastline. The waves winnow out the finer sediments, leaving only well-sorted and well-rounded sand grains that form ripples. Shallow marine environment. The mud and silt removed from the shoreline and from river mouths are transported by tidal currents and deposited in quieter water below the wave zone. It forms well-sorted and well-rounded silt and mud layers inhabited by various organisms like worms and mollusks. Shallow water carbonate environment. In shallow marine environment where the supply of sediments is limited, marine organisms like coral reefs develop where the water is fairly warm, clear, and full of nutrients. Most of the sediments are derived from the shell and coral fragments collectively called carbonate sediments. Limestones can be formed in this environment. Slope failures from the steep slopes of submarine canyons generate submarine landslides which create sediments of varying sizes. Turbidity currents carry the finer sediment components ranging from sand to clay to a submarine fan where turbidite deposit sequence is formed. In the deep ocean floor, clay and plankton settle down and form very thin layers of mud. Chalk is formed very fine calcite shells, while chert is derived from silicose shells.